So you've decided to become an automotive technician. Despite all the bad talk on this industry, you've landed your first apprentice job, or you've just in general landed your first lube tech job at a mom and pop shop or at the dealership, and you're going to start getting your feet wet in just a bit here. And you're entering as a rookie the automotive repair industry. Now, I don't have decades of experience under my belt, but I'm also not a rookie anymore. I've been around the block a couple times. I've done some engine work, a lot of transmission and big repair, suspension, undercarriage stuff. I've done electrical diagnostics. I've done a lot of service work, tires, brakes, fluids, filters. I've seen my fair share and I've gone through a couple of stages, and I fell on my face a couple of times in my rookie career. And that's really what I wanted to share with you guys today and give you some tips on how to sustainably become successful at this job long term. So without a too long intro, let's just get right into it. My first point that I would want to share with you guys, regardless of where you're at right now, is get educated and get the basics down. Regardless of if you have zero experience or you've been working on cars with mom or with dad since you were about yay tall, all of that is okay. And realistically, no one should be expecting you to come in with years and years and years of wrenching knowledge as a new guy or as an apprentice. There are, however, a couple of things and a couple of fundamentals that realistically you should have locked down before you even step into the shop. But if not, you should at least have these down within the first 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks of working in a shop. Before getting stuck in, regardless of if you're just going to be doing oil changes and fluids, filters, brakes, tires, you really need to understand how an internal combustion engine works, because even though EV proliferation is coming along more and more nowadays, most of what you're going to be working on is still internal combustion stuff. So you don't need to be on an engineer level of understanding on how engines work, but you should at least understand the basic principles and how they operate and how stuff is actuated, how an engine works. Because even if you're just doing oil changes and really basic stuff, you still need to understand how an engine is lubricated, why oil breaks down, why certain fluids or certain wear items need to be replaced. And all of that, of course, you could just go in and just say, okay, so my job is just to change oil and do plugs or whatever. But the more you understand the why behind what you're doing, the better you're going to actually be able to continue on within this industry and actually become a better technician. A good benchmark that I like to set for apprentices or new guys is you should be able to explain to about an 8th grader how an engine works, how a powertrain works, how is power or how is work done in an engine, how does that mechanically work, and how is it transferred to the wheels. It doesn't need to be super technical or super advanced, but you've really got to have the basics down. And if you can explain it to an 8th grader, probably means that you have the fundamentals nailed down pretty good. Since new guys or apprentices are going to be doing a lot of maintenance and service, you should really start to understand the fundamentals and even some of the sort of more advanced details on stuff like engine oil, brake fluid, filters, spark plugs, basically all of your service and wear items. Why are you replacing them? What is engine oil viscosity? What's the difference between a 5-weight 30 oil and a 5-weight 40 oil? What do all of those numbers mean? How does that play into how the engine operates? Why do some manufacturers recommend this viscosity versus using another viscosity? Why in your owner's manual are there usually multiple oil viscosity levels listed in the owner's manual that can be used at different temperature ranges for that engine? Understanding all of that versus just going about doing the service work is really going to help you not only become better at what you're doing at the start anyway, but it's also going to help you understand concepts in the future. So I really, really recommend getting that stuff really locked down. So my second point is going to be start learning about tools. You're going to be using tools a lot. And I know it's easy to get carried away with all the fancy name brand tools like Hazet, Vurt, Snap-on, Mac, Matco. It kind of varies depending on what country you're in. But more so than just understanding the brands of tools, I'd really recommend understanding the types of tools and sort of being smart about tools, especially for beginners and apprentices. Whether or not you just bought your first tool set because you had to show up to your job, or you're going to be working out of your mentor's toolbox like I did for the first 1.5 years, really having a good understanding about tools is going to be super helpful throughout your progression as a rookie, and hopefully later on to being a good mainline tech or even a master tech later on. Understand why stuff like quarter-inch drive, 3/8-inch drive, and half-inch drive tools, especially when it comes to ratchets and sockets, even exist. What are their applications? Why do we have 3 different main drive sizes in automotive? I know that there's other drive sizes, but these 3 are really the main that we're using in automotive. And beyond just understanding why we have different types of tools, also try to understand or pick up pretty quick why we use certain tools at certain times. When is it smart to use half-inch drive stuff? When is it smart to use quarter-inch drive stuff? Why is 3/8 pretty much the most popular drive size in automotive? And you'll obviously learn this through experience with time, and you'll develop your own preference, which we'll get into later. But really understand when to use what tool. Like, it's probably not smart to use a pair of these to grab a nut on a brand new Porsche or on a brand new BMW versus actually going and grabbing the right wrench. Understanding stuff like that and understanding when to use tools like this versus when to use tools like this that are precisely fitting and are probably not going to damage the fastener is going to be really critical in avoiding mistakes and avoiding getting chewed out at some point in the beginning. You don't need to be on the level of a tool truck franchisee or someone who sells tools or designs tools to be good at your job, but understanding when to use what and what tools are better suited for certain applications and are less suited for other applications is really going to help you not only not damage fasteners, but it's also really going to help you be a faster technician. But we'll get into that a little bit later. Over time, you are going to develop your own preference for what you like and what you don't like. But especially at the start, I'd kind of just really stick to the basics, like maybe just stick to quarter-inch and 3/8 drive. At least, in my opinion, new guys and apprentices shouldn't be having to grab half-inch tools that much. But really just stick to the basics and try to learn more about tools as you go day to day. Just as an example, my favorite ratchet drive size in automotive is 3/8. It caters to most of the needs that you need to do, especially for light repair to basic maintenance stuff. But it's also just the tool size I find that provides the most selection of tools in the tight applications that we have in automotive. And so that's what I like to gravitate to. Take a look at what your mentor or the guys around you are using, what kinds of tools they're using, also what kind of brands they use. Avoid buying all the really flashy premium stuff at the beginning, but we'll also get into that a little bit later. But just take a look around at what the guys around you or guys or gals around you are using, just to really get a feel for how you should go about certain stuff. My third point is going to be developing and sticking to processes. I get it. The first year in automotive is going to be tricky. At the same time, everyone's expecting you to know what you're doing and not mess stuff up. People also don't trust you to do just about anything because you're the new guy. It's difficult, and you're going to be second guessing yourself a lot. And actually, to this day, I sometimes have to step back and sort of evaluate whether or not what I'm doing is a smart move right now, especially on bigger stuff. But at the beginning, it's going to be about just about everything that you do is going to have a lot of second guessing from you, from yourself, but also from a lot of people in your environment. And the way that I like to at least tell new guys or apprentices how to get around that is just develop a good, solid process and stick to that. Instead of being perpetually stuck in a sort of, oh God, what do I do now kind of mindset, having a process and procedures to most of your basic jobs is going to allow you to progress and actually do the work correctly faster and faster as time goes. Especially doing a lot of maintenance and service work, if you have a good process for doing inspections and oil changes and brakes and fluids and filters and all of the basic stuff, if you have a good process there, you basically eliminate your risk for making mistakes because you're going to have stuff torqued, filled, and replaced and done correctly if you stick to your process versus getting distracted or forgetting stuff all the time. So what does that look like in practice? Well, I'll just give you a snippet to how I do oil changes. So when I pull a car into my bay to do an oil change, I always start by opening the oil fill cap. I'll get into why that is, or why I keep this process in that specific order when I've explained my entire process. So I always start by opening the fill cap. Then I'll put the car on the hoist. I'll locate and replace the oil filter before I drain the oil. I'll then drain the oil, let it drain, put back to the plug. And when I go to put the plug back, what I'll usually do is I'll have the plug in my hand. Like, let's say this is an oil drain plug. I'll have the plug in my hand, but I will also have my torque wrench set to the correct torque with the proper socket on. So just for demonstration purposes, this here is a 13. So I'll usually have the oil drain plug in my hand and my torque wrench with the correct socket, with the correct torque set, ready to go put the drain plug back into the pan and torque it up immediately. Once I've done that, I'll lower the car. Filter's already replaced, so I don't need to worry about that. The oil fill cap is already open, so I know where the oil goes in. I know that I can access the oil refill point, because sometimes you might go to drain the oil on a car only to realize, well, wait a minute, the hood latch release mechanism on this car doesn't work, or the oil fill cap is so tightly on the engine that removing it actually damages the fill cap, and now there's no way for you to fill the car, or even if you do manage to fill the car, there's no way for you to seal off the engine at the top. Having a process like that, like I just described to you, is going to help eliminate mistakes. Another thing that process does for me is it makes sure that, let's say that I pull in the car right before lunch break. I start doing my process. I drain the oil, car comes back down, and lunch rolls around. And so I leave the shop, go have my lunch, and come back. Now I'm not left asking myself, did I put oil in that car? Or did I torque up the drain bolt because I might have been in a hurry? Or let's say it's not lunch break, but someone in the middle of your oil change asks you to help them out and do something. Well, now let's say that you just run the drain bolt in by hand, and you were going to go to your box to grab your torque wrench and torque it up as soon as you finish running it in by hand. Well, if you get distracted or pulled away from work and come back and you forget to torque that drain bolt, you've now got a problem, right? Because you forgot about it. The thing with the oil filter is, especially, I guess with the spin-on canister type oil filters, depending on where they're located, it's not that bad. But I like to do the oil filters first, because that means that when I go to refill the car, I actually have the correct amount of oil in it. Because let's say that you have a oil filter that's located on the top of the engine, and you replace it after you've sealed up the pan again at the bottom. Well, when you go to release that oil filter, it's actually going to drain some of that old oil back into the pan. So you not only have you not gotten rid of all the old oil, even if it's only like half a liter, but let's say that you drain the oil, put the plug back in, torqued it up, put the car back down, replace the filter, which means opening it and then replacing it with a new one. Well, you've now just put, I'll just say, like on BMWs, it's about half a liter of oil back into the pan of old oil. And so if you now go to fill the engine with the specified amount that it needs to have with new engine oil, you might be overfilling it, which half a liter isn't going to do much. But imagine if you do that every single time. With time, you're actually going to accumulate more and more oil that's left over in the pan, because you're doing the filter towards the end before you drain everything out. That's just the way that I like to do it. You need to develop your own process to how you like to do stuff. And I have checklists at this point mentally for all of the basic work that I do, whether it's inspections or brakes or oil changes or brake fluid, stuff like that. Another example that I want to give, because this is pretty important to me, because it has to do with the customer safety, or the safety of everyone who's taking part of traffic, is my process to torquing up wheels when I've removed wheels. So I have a rule that if wheels come off the car, as soon as they go back on and the wheels make first contact with the floor, all wheels get torqued. I don't care if I just remove the front left or just the rear right. I torque all of the wheels once a wheel has come off, has gone back on, and the car has touched the ground again. That way, I don't forget to torque the wheel after filling out a checklist or filling in some new oil or whatever it is that I have to do, because I'll make a mental note of like, hey, before I pull the car out of the shop, I need to torque up this wheel, and then something happens and you forget it. I torque wheels as soon as they touch the floor again. It's just my personal rule, and I've seen coworkers leave wheels untorqued, and it's a pretty ugly discussion when the customer comes back or calls in because they had an accident as to why they didn't torque the wheel up. So just to avoid stuff like that, I have these processes that I follow down to the T every single time. And another bonus to that is obviously going to be, if you're able to rely on your process to deliver quality work every time, you don't need to think so much. You don't need to remember so much stuff, because your process is going to basically foolproof your work to a certain degree. Another bonus tip is, if you're at the dealership anyway, you're probably getting checklists for most inspection and basic maintenance and wear item jobs anyway. So especially if you're new, read that checklist and actually, for the first like 10 cars, actually follow that checklist down to the T that the manufacturer provides you, because that way you have an idea of what they expect from you, and that's going to help you develop your own process. So that's about all of the advice that I want to give in this first part to this video. I'm probably going to be doing multiples to the series as stuff comes to my memory on, where what I struggled with or stuff that I learned over the years. I'd really urge you to just go over what I said in this video and find out for yourself the best way to tackle learning about cars, learning about tools, developing your own process, just sort of comfortably getting into the automotive space and understanding what you're doing and why you're doing it and how to go about doing it. And I think for now, that's going to be all that I want to say on this topic, because it's already a lot to digest. When you're coming in, you don't want to be bombarded with tips and tricks. But at the start, I feel like this is a good way to get your feet wet. So if you like this video, please do leave a comment. Tell me what you think. For you experienced guys out there who actually watch this, go ahead and leave some of your tips and tricks or some of your processes down in the comments. And I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.